Thank you, good night, and God bless.
So there you have it, Nikki Haley, the GOP response to the State of the Union address. Let's once again go to our panel. Here in studio, Dick Morris joins us, the veteran political analyst. Let's also head for New York, where we have Rick Ungar and Steve Mossberg standing by. All right, Steve, I come to you first. What did you think? I thought, first of all, just to say, I think she really hit all the points. She nailed it confidently. I think she probably could have been a little more glib on camera. You and I being TV guys for a long time, they probably could have trained her a little bit better to do it, but I think she hit everything.
I think she hit everything. First, I thought what's she doing here? She's going to disagree with Donald Trump, but basically she tempered down a little bit what Trump said on immigration, saying, you know, we can't discriminate, but we can't allow illegal immigrants in here. We can't allow refugees if we don't know what their intentions are. Once we do know what their intentions are, all are welcome no matter who they are. Her history, which is a winning story, and all the way to the end where she said that we'll sign agreements as Republicans, lower taxes, better education, end Obamacare. You could keep your doctor, as you said, hit on everything. Have agreements, international agreements, where they're celebrated in Israel and protested in Iran instead of the other way around. And then she ended by calling America the greatest country in the history of man or women. I mean, you're right. In about 10 minutes, she said a lot more than Obama said in an hour.
It was really an audition. She nailed it. She has to be on anybody's short list for vice president. She was eloquent. She was attractive. And you always wonder with a politician, particularly a woman who's new in politics, can you see right through her? Sometimes with Sarah Palin, you could. You know, you'd see right through, and you'd see the chair she's sitting on behind her. I couldn't see through her. I think she was really articulate, convincing. Some of those lines were great. I hope she helped write them. And I think that I don't know if she's ready for prime time, but we ought to go find out.
Let's do this then. Rick, you've looked at politics for a long time as well. Do you think that she is ready for prime time? And do you think that the Republican base would react to her if indeed she was put on the ticket as a vice president?
Well, I tell you what, I feel very much the way I think Dick felt about the president's speech. I didn't agree with everything she said, but I thought she did a great job in delivering it. It's honestly the first time in many years where I didn't watch the speech that comes after the State of the Union without having a bunch of jokes in my head. She was really very engaging. She came across as very reasonable. And hit some fantastic lines. As I said, I may not have agreed with them, but she put them beautifully. I am incredibly impressed with what I just saw.
I want to talk about that reasonable side as well. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
No, I think she might turn some people off when she talked about it. She didn't mention the Confederate flag, but she did say they got rid of a symbol of hate. And, you know, I think she'll ruffle a lot of feathers with a lot of people by calling, you know, people who knew what she was referring to, who have different feelings about that flag as something different than a symbol of hate. And I think she, you know, if we're talking about her as a VP candidate, she might have to watch how she phrases that and clear it up a little bit.
I'm not sure if that would bother her as much, to be very honest. But then again, you and I need to have a discussion on that one day. I think that would be fun between the two of us here. What I did hear in her was that she managed to hit the conciliatory tones up first when she said, no one abiding by our laws should feel unwelcome, which I think is an important point when we're in the immigration debate right now. But then she came right back and said, no immigrants are here illegally, no refugees, until we can determine exactly what their aims are. So I think what I heard here was a big difference in how, for instance, Donald Trump goes at it and says, here's the bad point, I'm going to hit this, and he's going to nail you. She goes back and says, wait a minute, let's take the friendly American approach. Let's be Americans first. And I think that is going to make her very attractive to people.
With all this feel-good stuff, 2 feel-good speeches in a row, a Democrat and a Republican, let's remember that both political parties are so furious at what's going on in Washington that Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders are now probably the frontrunners of each political party. And if they're not, they're damn close to it. The Democratic and Republican electorates are damn close to a crazed mob determined to tear things down. They're a Bastille Day audience. And I think we have to understand that the politics of Washington, the consensuses, the wonderful trade deals, the immigration we let in endlessly, confident that it won't take away American jobs, all of those BS consensus that underscore American policy have left an electorate that's furious and hates everybody who's in Washington and wants to kill them.
Now, you just hit on a couple of things. Rick, let me come to you first on this, because let's take this. You mentioned Bernie Sanders.
And by the
We've
way,
talked about him now.
bipartisan. They hate.
Sure.
They hate him equally.
And they hate each other equally. It's always it's the way it is in Washington. Rick, let's look at it this way.
Not really. The Trump people don't particularly hate the Democrats, and the Sanders people don't particularly hate the Republicans. The Trump and the Cruz people hate the Republican National Committee, and the Sanders people hate the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton.
The point is we have to get past all the hate, which actually is part of what Washington politics is. Let's be honest here. Rick, let me talk to you about this. Bernie Sanders sits in the audience tonight. And again, we've heard two very good speeches. Steve, I'm going to ask you the same question here, but I'll start with you, Rick. You're Bernie Sanders sitting there. You're Donald Trump, as a matter of fact. But let's go for you with Sanders first. You've been thrown some fresh red meat now. Barack Obama has thrown a few things out there. Nikki Haley has come back and countered. If you're Bernie Sanders now and or Hillary Clinton, how do you answer tomorrow? Because you know that this is going to be sitting on their plate, and they're going to have to respond to this because the questions are going to be coming at them fast and furious about what was said tonight.
Well, I would expect Bernie Sanders to do what he's done pretty much since the beginning, and that's answer the way he feels. The one thing you got to love about Bernie Sanders is he doesn't take an overtly political approach to things. I don't personally think that Bernie is likely to be our next president or even the nominee of his party, but I have nothing but admiration for the way he approaches everything and how honest he is. He's going to tell you what he thinks, and I think he'll probably be largely in tune with the president, particularly on the 2 years of free community college, because he has been pushing that very hard.
Do you think we will hear Hillary Clinton talk about certain things, and do you think that she will disagree with anything the president said?
The only thing that she'll disagree with is she staked out a position on TPP, and when she gets those questions, she's going to basically say, I have concerns. And by the way, the reason we all have concerns is nobody can really read this thing, and we're all suspicious of these trade deals because we've seen how previous ones have not worked out well.
You're talking about TTP, or you're talking about the Obamacare, which nobody read? I'm getting confused
I
now.
read it
Yeah, you
7
read it.
times.
Okay,
So she
great.
should know it's in TPP. She negotiated it.
All right, Steve, go ahead, because I wanted to ask you as well, because now that Barack Obama has thrown out the fresh red meat there, how does Donald Trump, Cruz, Rubio, Christie, all the rest, how do they then go on the attack tomorrow?
Well, I don't know about Christie, but I mean Donald Trump, for instance. I just think that it's a gift box. You know, again, I think they start with the fact that, and I hate to be repetitive, but they start with the fact that all this was going on while 10 of our sailors were being held prisoner against their will. And he made no mention of it. I mean, I think that's what they focus on. That's what they harp on. Otherwise, I think they hit on some of the points that Nikki Haley hit on, which is that he speaks eloquently at times, but his record falls very, very short. And they could go through it point by point by point.
We should notice Nikki Haley also did not mention the sailors that are being held in Iraq.
I don't know that it's her job as a governor.
I think they both should have.
Well, I think when you're the commander-in-chief, it's incumbent upon you, you know, but I mean, I just don't think it's her job.
All right, go ahead. You want to go back to Bernie Sanders?
Let's go back to what Bernie Sanders will say tomorrow. He will say that in Obama's whole speech, there was no mention of the Wall Street dishonesty, of the need to lock those folks up, of the need to stop printing money and flooding the top 1% with it so that their incomes go through the roof. And I believe that Trump and Cruz, commenting on it, will say there was no mention of the idea that massive immigration holds wages down to a point where income inequality is guaranteed. Obama's statement was the quintessential articulation of the bipartisan Washington duopoly's point of view on everything. And Trump and Cruz on the one hand and Sanders on the other disagree with that substantially and significantly and take with them the bulk of the American people.
Let me ask
Well, we'll
this,
have a
which
gentleman's bet, because I think what Bernie will not talk about that. What he will talk about is Obama highlighting how special rules are written for the wealthy corporations. So we'll have a bet on that.
The one thing that I really wanted to hit on. Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I was just going to say Dick is right. You know, with little fanfare, there's a new rule, Department of Homeland Security. They're letting in 100,000 more foreign college graduates into this country this year who could get hired. They'll compete with our own sons and daughters. They'll get hired at lower wages because those wages will then be subsidized by you and me, the taxpayer. And that happened with very little fanfare, and that is very, very dangerous.
It's a proposed
rule. It's a
rule. No, it was published in the Federal Register, out for comment, not a rule
Means
yet.
in 5 minutes it becomes a rule.
So let me ask a question of
nobody
you all
comments.
here, because there's two things that I want to really clarify. The president didn't mention guns, and he was very light on immigration. Two things that this country is very interested in every single moment of every single day. Dick, why did he not mention either? No, he mentioned immigration, but he didn't go deep into it, but nothing about guns.
Well, with guns, the Democratic Party has embraced a position that the American people reject. You used to have about a 10 or 15 point majority for gun control.
So he knows he's wrong. He knows he's
Now
beaten, basically.
Now it's flipped the other way, and you have 7 or 8% against it. The American people, and even assault rifles, the American people do not understand why it makes sense to say, America is facing a new wave of terrorism, let's take away our guns. They don't understand how you can come to that conclusion, and Washington does. So I think he was wise about that. In terms of immigration, his real fear has to be that what he's already in soup over, which is amnesty and all of that, which Americans oppose, now includes letting in the Syrians. The issue is not immigration now, it's infiltration. And that really is an issue that the president
Which he
has
stayed
to
away
stay
from as
far
well.
away from.
Which he
Yeah.
stayed very far away from. I mean, Rick, would you like to have seen him? Because in the last couple of weeks, last week especially, we have heard the president double, triple down on guns, basically saying, this is what I'm going after, and he didn't mention it. Would you like to have seen him at least take it on and be more forceful?
No, I thought he was very smart. Here's what happens. Every time he does, I go out and I buy stock in gun companies. He becomes America's #1 gun salesman. So that's what happens. Then, Dick just said, take away the guns. Barack Obama has never suggested taking away guns. He has suggested more background checks. I'm not a big anti-gun guy. That's not my cause, not my thing. I respect your right to have one or have 50 or whatever the law allows you to have. I think staying away from it was brilliant because it just would have overtaken everything.
I got to tell you, Ed, I was shocked.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve, make
Dick.
your point, then we'll bring Dick in. Go ahead.
I was shocked based on coming off that embarrassing CNN town hall where the man without a prompter was dumbfounded, couldn't answer questions, and actually told a woman who was raped, well, you may not want a gun to protect yourself and your kids because someone could get hurt. I mean, it was an embarrassment, and here he had an opportunity with the prompter, with the script, to fire back, if no pun intended, and poor choice of words, and to reestablish himself in his argument, and I don't know why he didn't, but he didn't.
I
Go
just
ahead,
want
Dick.
to explain the confiscation issue. In New York and Connecticut, state laws granted, not federal, they have passed very strict rules requiring the registration of automatic weapons, and meaning AK-47s, not machine guns, but things where each trigger pull is
Right,
a
it's an
separate
automatic
shot,
weapon, right.
but a bigger magazine. And they are now announcing that anyone who does not comply with that, who has not registered, is going to be subject to confiscation of their firearm. Knock, 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 kick open the door, and take their...
You don't really think that's going to happen?
Oh, I do.
You really think that we're going to have
not only that, not
people
only is it not
knocking
gonna
down
happen,
doors?
That's
I
not the
absolutely-
president.
Hey, come on.
You just said
What
two
do you-
states.
what-
2 states.
Yeah, New York and
Not the
Connecticut.
president.
The point is that is where gun control is headed. The registration requirement potentially makes criminals of 50,000 people in Connecticut who have automatic weapons who have not registered.
But an AK-47
And
is
God
all right if
knows-
it was registered before 1986 as an automatic weapon. Anything after that, you can purchase that from someone, but you still have to purchase it from someone who had it registered before 1986. And Dick, let's be very
Yes,
honest,
but if
because
you
I'm a
don't-
gun owner, there are people out there who are taking semi-automatic AK-47s and they're turning it into automatics by going on the web and buying about $10 worth of parts.
Yeah, but if you own a rifle of that sort, you have to register that you are the owner. And that then sets up a technical violation of law which permits the confiscation of the weapon. Now, how that law is enforced, will it be knock, 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 break in and take the gun, which I think the gun control advocates want, and I do not trust Mayor de Blasio not to do, or will it be, we'll pass out leaflets and urge people to register?
Well, let me ask that,
but
because
it's an effort to make a huge proportion of gun owners criminals.
You're bringing up New York. Steve, you live in Manhattan right now. Do you expect that's something that Bill de Blasio would do?
Oh, are you kidding? In about a half a second. But here, by the way, these are semi-automatic, not automatic. Automatic is already illegal in New York State anyway. But let me point something out. You talk about knock, 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 and Rick could say this is a state again. But Obama's going to let doctors now, weigh in, and HIPAA records will become, able to be passed on when it comes to people who want guns. It's a very dangerous, slippery slope. In California, as of this year, a judge, unbeknownst to a gun owner, could sign a document, and they come to your home, they knock down the door if you don't answer it, and they take your gun for 21 days because somebody said that you're a threat to yourself or a threat to another person. You don't even know about it, and they'll take your gun.
They do that in red states like Indiana already. Look, these were two great examples because what Steve said is actually something we should all be focusing on. The president did suggest that, where doctors could be obligated to have to tell FBI agents who are doing background checks, and I have some problems with that. I think there's some very serious questions. But Dick started out the conversation talking about the president's speech and taking away your guns, and then went to the laws of two different states. We can't blame the president, unfortunately, for what states pass and how they decide that they're going to execute on those laws. I don't understand
Rick,
that.
do you seriously
Steve's
believe
point,
that
a little
he
more
will not
valid.
embrace that agenda if New York and Connecticut, two major states, have done it? California will do it.
Don't know if he would or
and
not. He
soon
didn't talk
and it'll
about it
show
in his
up in the
speech.
agenda of the next Democratic president. So when we talk about confiscation, don't act like we're talking about space aliens.
Gentlemen,
Well,
we got
actually, I think
about
it's interesting that you think that our next president's a Democrat.
We got about 6 or 7 minutes left
Touche.
here, so let's go ahead and let's get everybody along here, and let's kind of wrap up what we heard here this evening. Steve Mossberg, I'm going to come to you first. The president with a very eloquent speech. If people have not seen it, guaranteed you're going to be able to see pieces of it here on Newsmax, your show, my show, J.D. Hayward's show. We're going to be talking about this now for some time to come. What do you think that the American people should take away from what they heard, Steve, and what they didn't hear?
I mean, I got to tell you, I know I respect the hell out of Dick Morris, certainly, and you and everybody else. But I mean, what do you? Of course, it was eloquent. I mean, I just don't. It didn't move me. Maybe because nothing he could say would move me, but it didn't move me. I don't think it was that significant. There was nothing new in there. It was the same garbage when it comes to terrorism. Again, he reestablished him as a JV team, a bunch of guys in trucks. And the economy is so great and everything. I mean, it's the same. I'm great. I did great, and I'm sorry that everybody is divisive now. And if that's my fault, I'm sorry. Maybe Lincoln could have done better. But all he does is divide. So I mean, to me, it was typical Obama. And I think if you watched it loving Obama, you're going to say, "Wow, that was pretty good." And if you watched it as a majority of Americans don't approve of Obama, you're going to say, typical Obama, yawn, yawn. They probably shut it off long before we did, and they move on.
Did he say anything that you agreed with, Steve, or anything that you appreciated?
If he said "God bless America," which I don't know that he did, then I agree
Yes,
with that.
he did. Yes, he did. He said "God bless America" at the end, and I gave you the chance to come in here and say exactly that. All right, Rick Ungar, same thing to you as well here, because we now have the president, and let's not forget Nikki Haley as well. We have to bring in the response as well and what that brings us. So to wrap it up and to what you saw and what you didn't see and what you really thought was missing.
I'm going to compliment both players tonight. I think Dick really did nail it when he pointed out the best part of Obama's speech was it wasn't a paragraph and an applause line. That is what we typically get in State of the Union addresses, and we didn't get that tonight. We got something what I thought was a bit more substantive, a bit more thoughtful, and hitting more broad issues as opposed to the laundry list. I personally really appreciated that. It's not going to surprise you that I agreed with a lot of what the president said. I particularly liked how he discussed some of the economic realities and how people get a little carried away in how they describe things as they actually are. We are still the strongest nation in the world. I never quite understand why the opponents of the president, I get that there are opponents of the president, but they become opponents of the United States. We are far better than Obama's opposition gives the country credit for. We aren't facing existential threats. We're not going away. We are the United States of America. We do have the strongest economy in the world, and I personally appreciate the president getting up there and saying, hey folks, maybe a little attitude adjustment. You may not like me, but things are going good. Now, as to the response, I was very impressed with Nikki Haley. I loved the reasonable tone that she took. As I said, there were things I may not have agreed with her on, but I liked the way she said it, and that actually counts for a lot in this day and age. And by the way, it tracks with everything I've ever heard about her. We may not be on the same side politically, but she is known to be a very compassionate person, a very decent person, and that matters to me. Character matters in a president and a vice president, so I think she scored too.
Couple of minutes we have here before I come to you, Dick. I just want to play this one soundbite from Barack Obama where, to what Rick said, where the president talked about America, talked about the strength of America, talked about what he believed in for this country. Let's just hear it and set this up.
I told you earlier, all the talk of America's economic decline is political hot air. Well, so is all the rhetoric you hear about our enemies getting stronger and America getting weaker. Let me tell you something. The United States of America is the most powerful nation on earth. Period. Period. It's not even close. It's not even close.
Yeah,
And if you look right there at the end, you see the military leaders sitting right there, and they're looking at it, and you almost, please don't ask, don't ask me to comment on this. But it was nice. It was very flighty.
Our enemies aren't getting stronger. Our enemies aren't getting stronger.
We'd be even stronger, Mr. President, if we had some soldiers and some planes. Despite the military
Well,
cuts.
and if we also had a military leadership here, I think that the military leaders had confidence in, because they do not have confidence in this president.
Let me comment on the speech. In the last 4 or 5 months in American politics, we have seen the emergence of a post-Obama, post-bipartisan consensus agenda on the Republican side by Cruz, Rubio, and Trump, and on the Democratic side by Sanders. And it has been a very exciting series of issues that gets into a whole series of problems that are ignored by the Washington duopoly. Obama presented tonight the argumentation for the duopoly. He presented the establishment's case on everything. And sometimes it was more Democrat, sometimes more centrist, but in every area he presented the establishment case. It is notable that our politics has moved so far beyond that case, and our citizens and their convictions are way ahead of the president on this stuff. And seeing his speech made me feel almost nostalgic for the days before we learned the stuff that Trump, Cruz, and Sanders have taught us.
I'm going to go back to something you said at the beginning of the show. You said you can't wait for the president to start singing Old Lang Syne. So there you go. It brings everything all around. I want to remind everybody, Steve Mossberg and the Steve Mossberg Show right here on the Newsmax network every single weekday. Steve has got an amazing grasp of what happens in politics. And boy, I'll tell you, he digs his teeth right in and attacks. Make sure you catch his show. And